This is the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing strategies so you can start living the life you want and get where you want to go. With your host, Justin Hanna.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode, Real Estate Investing 365. Today, I got with me Breeya Johnson. She owns Breeya Johnson and Associates. She's out of the Kansas City area, right, Breeya? Is that right?
Yep, Kansas City, Missouri. Good old Missouri girl.
All right. Oh, Missouri. See, I was thinking Kansas City, Kansas. But
no, everyone thinks that. It's not. Well, there is a Kansas City, Kansas, but we're better, if I have to say.
I hear it's better to invest on the Missouri side.
It is. We have a lot more going on.
Okay. Well, that's good
We really
to know.
do.
See?
Yeah.
Well, she's in, like we said, Kansas City, Missouri, and she got started in 2009-ish, back when around that time in real estate when you're younger. She's not that old now.
Yeah. No, it was more around I think 2015 is when I got started.
Oh, okay. But
Yeah.
Something about 2009. I know, because I read it on your website.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Maybe you're in college.
I was in ninth grade.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you need to go back and adjust that on your website.
Yeah, maybe I do. That's so crazy. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so how old are you?
So I'm 25, and actually on Sunday I'll be 26.
Oh.
I started in the business when I was 20, going into 21.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 5 years now I've been in the game.
All right. Well, we'll dive into all that in 2 seconds. So right now.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
why don't we get into how you got started, where you got the idea for real estate. You're not that old, and obviously you made some big moves right out of the gate. So just start with your story from the beginning, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I got in real estate kind of by a fluke, I guess. I graduated at college and I got a bachelor's in health science, minor in business, didn't know what I wanted to do. And the only option I had was to work at Cerner here in town. And I did not want to do that. So I got introduced to real estate investing. And from there, I just jumped face first. And I say face first because I did everything backwards, everyone says. I got a 11-unit apartment complex, owner finance, then went down to a 16-unit, then went down to duplex, single-family houses, and then single-family houses, and then land, and then I started to flip and then consult. And so I'm all over the place, but trying to tickle down there for a second. Normally they tell you to start the opposite way. But I just didn't want to work for anybody, and the options I had with my career, I was like, that sucks. So just dived into real estate investing and just haven't looked back since.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, That's not really, there's no really right way to do real estate. There's people that go out there and they buy their first deal as a big apartment complex or single family home. I guess is the way most people get started. That's the way I got started, but doesn't mean there's one way is right or the other, because it obviously can work out either way. So how did you even get the idea of real estate investing? Why was that even in your head?
Honestly, if I think all the way back to it, the idea really started is when I would see all the blight property in our community. And I think that's what really sparked the idea of wanting to own, wanting to be a part of, be a part of our community and provide housing, be a part of our community and, redo these houses in Kansas City, especially on the Missouri side. We have a lot of distressed property. And so being able to kind of give them a nice facelift and go in there and clean them up and put some love back into them really is what sparked that wanting to do this more. I think when I first started, I didn't really consider myself as an investor. I just was like, this is what I'm doing, trying to live my 21-year-old life. And from that, the passion just kept me going. That makes sense. I don't know if that even answered your question, but yeah.
I mean, at least, at some point you had to get the idea, because a lot of people don't even know anything about real estate. They don't know that you can go out.
Yeah.
They just think of buying your own single family house, for your first house to live in. So I was just curious, what even put the idea that you could do investing? Most people, they read Rich Dad Poor Dad and it kind of gets them out of that state of mind, or they have a family member or something. But you just kind of saw the property and you're like, huh?
Yeah, I just stumbled into it. I just stumbled into real estate by trying to learn how to create that impact in the community. So coming from like that service-based mindset, health sciences kind of gives you that service base, coming in and wanting to make an impact, and then learning how I can make that impact is by being, I guess, the investor at the time and buying the property, providing homes, and cleaning up the area by doing the flips and the rehabs. I think that kind of probably answered your questions a little bit more. Sorry about that.
That's perfect. That makes sense. So, so you end up buying your first property. You end up buying is an 11 unit, you said, and
yes.
You got that owner finance. So let's kind of walk through that deal a little bit. How did you? First of all, you weren't scared to just go right to an 11 unit because you probably didn't know what you didn't know. So you're just like,
right.
Yeah, that looks cool. I'll buy it. And so how did that deal kind of come about? How did you find it? How did you talk to them about owner financing and all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all through the power of like networking, and networking within my network is how I got exposed to the deal. From there, I just kind of I was swimming as I was sinking and going for it, just asking, hey, I'm wanting to do this. Do you have would you help me and guide me? And I think me being 21, people thought that was so intriguing and they thought I had balls and I didn't even know what they're talking about. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
And so people wanted to help me and educate me and mentor me. And so through that, I just had so many doors open. And I don't know if I'm answering your question properly, but just through conversation and networking and telling my story and what I want to do, I've had people that have just wanted to help guide me. And from that, I was able to talk about, how to go about getting owner financing or how to go about buying such property. And then from there, that's when I started to dive into the books like The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is when I was like, oh crap, I have an apartment complex. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
That's when I started to educate about what an investor is. But it never started off for me as wanting to do it for the financial side or wanting to do it for the investing side. It was all through passion and wanting to make an impact on my community.
Okay, that makes sense. But do you remember how you actually found that property? How did that specific property come about?
It was just the person I was talking to. That's what they had available and that's what they were ready to offer. And I'm like, alrighty. So I wish there was some cool way that I could say I did some due diligence and found it.
Yeah.
But at that stage I was like, well, whatever you'll give me, I'll take. And so that's how that conversation went, is he was like, hey, I have this property. We can set up a plan where it can be win-win for both sides. And it was awesome. But it was definitely a reason why he offered up that property. It needed a lot of help, a lot of love. And so I kind of just took it in bites.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So pretty much, which it comes up in every episode that we talk about, I would say, excuse me, is just the networking is so key, right? Because you never know who you're going to run across that has property or that wants to get rid of property.
Right.
And if you tell people, hey, I want to be a real estate investor. I'm trying to get into this, or I do this a lot. Do this. That's weird. But the more people you talk to, the more deals will end up coming your way. So that's what happened with you. So this guy comes to you and says, hey, I have 11 unit, let's try to work a deal. I guess you just kind of confided in him and said, yeah, show me how to do it. And he, or they, I don't know if it was he.
It was he. Yeah, it was a he.
So
it was more of a conversation of hey, I'm 21. I'm really passionate. I want to do this. I don't have the credit. I have only a little bit of money. How can we make this work? And that's when we came up with the owner financing situation, which worked perfectly because he owned it free and clear. But yeah, it's just exactly like that, having the balls to have that conversation and be vulnerable.
Yeah. So how did you guys structure the deal? Because you didn't have enough, did you have enough money for a significant down payment, or was he just kind of listen, I'm sick of managing this place, so you take it over, you just pay me the X amount, and then if you can raise the rents or fix up the places, you get all the profit on top of that?
Yeah, exactly it. So just went in there with the understanding of I give them a percentage of all the rent intake and I just manage it for them and also rehab it at time. And then eventually what I did is once we got it mostly rehabbed and completely rented out with higher rent ranges, I sold it and then he got the rest of his money. It was more of he just found a liking within me and wanted to help me out and get my feet wet.
Okay. So how did you do the work on the units that were renovated, or did you hire somebody to help you with the construction?
Yeah, so how I did it is I have an uncle who's a contractor. So he kind of came out and helped out with different apartments, and we would do one at a time. So we did one and then rent it out and then do another, rent it out, do another, rent it out. So it was a really slow process. It probably took about 2 years to completely finish it because we were just kind of doing it as it would come. As the rent would roll in, we would put it towards the materials and all that good stuff, and just doing like a cosmetic um, facelift, I like to say.
Yeah. Okay.
So
No,
that's how we did that. Yeah.
perfect. That makes a ton of sense. And that was a perfect time too, because you said you bought it in like 2015. So if it took a couple years, you ended up selling it in 2017. And luckily there in Kansas City, it was just appreciating like crazy, right? Everybody kind
Yeah.
of knew this hidden gem that's like this giant city that I guess people didn't
Yeah.
think about before, but
Yeah.
I'm sure the prices started to drastically go up. So during this time, did you end up managing the property yourself, or did you hire a property manager?
I managed it myself.
Okay.
So I was on site all the time, and I will never recommend that to anyone.
Right.
Yeah, so it was fun. It was a lot of toilet calls, but it was
Right.
fun.
Right. Well, when you're young, like I said, you didn't know what you didn't know,
Right.
but you'll learn more that way doing your first deal, managing the property. I mean, you learn it in and out. So then when you do hire a property manager,
1,000.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know what's going to need to be done. So that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. Was there anything that happened during that deal that, like, knowing what you know now would have changed your mind about doing it, or just like a big issue that you didn't know beforehand?
I would say taking on such a distressed property, having to do the amount of work that I had to do, and paying how much I did pay. I'm super grateful and blessed for that specific property and what happened and the opportunity that I received. However, looking back on it, I think there were some different things I could have structured within the loan. There's also things I could have considered a little bit more when it comes to the scope of work I was willing to do. And yeah, I think that would be just a little bit more due diligence. Now I know exactly what to look for. So that conversation looks a little bit different nowadays.
Yeah, but again, it's like, that what Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets always says, like, even on your first deal, if you don't make any money, even if you lose a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, well, it doesn't really matter. That's fine. Just do the first deal. You know what I mean? Just get
Yeah.
it done, because people go to college, like, yourself, you went to college for however many years,
Mm-hmm.
and it costs an X amount of dollars, which is usually quite a bit in the United States. And
Yeah.
then you come out with no job. And you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you don't have any job experience. You just have like this degree that says, hey, I can take tests and do my stuff in college well. But then
Right.
at least this, if you made some money on it, I assume it was a great experience. So, like I'm saying, just get your first deal done. Definitely.
Yes, yes. And it was worth all the time that I put into it. I've learned so much. I learned how to work with contractors, what to look for, how to manage property. I learned the eviction process, which was super fun.
Yeah.
And just learning the ins and outs of like what it means to own property and the difference between a property owner and a landlord. I think that was the most like important thing that I've learned in that process is the difference between those two.
So explain that. What do you mean by the difference between the property owner and the landlord?
So a property owner to me is when you own the property and it's just cash flowing for you. So you only check on it when it's time to collect your money. And a landlord is in it every single day doing the daily grind, and it's more of a full-time job than it is as a passive income flow. And so learning those two differences really made the difference, because there was a point in my career that I thought that I would just get out of real estate. It was too much. I couldn't take the toilet calls. I'm a very empathetic person.
Yeah.
So when someone would call me and say, "Hey, Breeya, I can't pay my rent this month," I would say, "Oh my gosh, that's so sad. What's going on?" And they would say, "Oh, my cat died." And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Stuffins," and then I'd be
Yeah.
like, "Don't worry about your rent." And learning about my personality too. Like, I can't be in the everyday task. Like, it's just not for me. I need to be more of a property owner and have it truly as passive income. So learning those two and learning about myself it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I totally agree too, because I've managed some properties myself, and then I've obviously now I just have property manager manage the
Yeah.
properties. And I'm kind of the same way as you, to where, I can be aggressive, but I don't really like confrontation. I like to just like keep
Mm-hmm.
everything cool. I'm just like kind of a low key. And, when people, I've had people ask, oh, well, I know it's no animals in the lease, but, my girlfriend, she's got this dog, and, can you just stay over here for a couple of days, or then it turns into even longer. Or like you said, they can't pay their rent for whatever reason. And I found
Yeah.
myself just being too easygoing. And now, like, one of the property managers I have is just like, dude, she's on it. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's her job. She's like, listen, I have a job to do. It's legally binding. Like, you guys are rent's due this day. If it's not paid that day, automatic $50 late fee. Like, she's just on
Yeah.
it, which makes my life so much easier because I just let
Oh
them
my
slide
gosh.
and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so insane because like it's so exhausting, especially if you are that compassionate and empathetic person, because there's so much. And I even had the hard time because I was so young. And so it sounds bad, but I would be out at our, nightclubs and bars, and I would see tenants and they'd be like, Breeya! And I'm like, So trying to live that 21-year-old life and manage a property, it came with so much, but it makes the difference to have someone who's, no nonsense. You got to pay on time, because at the end of the day, it is a business. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. I definitely recommend all the time
Yeah. And
a property manager.
and I'm not saying it's for everybody. Some people I interviewed a guy, I think his podcast will come out a couple of weeks before this one. And, he manages all his units. He's got like, I don't know how many now, 30 something units or 40 units, whatever it was. And he
Yeah.
loves it. You know what I mean? Like, he just loves it. He just loves being hands-on. He doesn't want to pay that extra amount because he's kind of frugal, and he's just
Yeah.
all about it, which is fine. But for me, I
That's
just think
cool.
my time is, I'd rather go ride dirt bikes or snowboard with my kids,
Yeah.
do something, you know what I mean? Other than go
Yes,
fix that thing at night. But everybody, whatever you do is just fine. There's a million different ways to do it, just like we said.
there
So,
is. There
um,
is.
okay. So you end up selling that property. Did you end up listing it with a broker, or did you sell it again through networking? How did the disposition of it kind of go?
So sold it through a wholesaler, actually. I thought was a realtor, ended up being a wholesaler, wholesaled it out. That's when I first got exposed to wholesaling, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's how that happened. I thought I was talking to a realtor, ended up being a wholesaler, and they wholesaled it off, and it was a win-win for everybody.
Did you get kind of mad when you saw like how much he was making on it and he didn't have to do anything?
No, not really, because I'm very understanding of like business is business, and everyone needs to win. And if we can all win, then that's awesome. So if you can get yours and I can still get mine, then hey, that's amazing for me. So yeah, no.
It totally makes sense. I think most of the time when people kind of run into that issue is when you're dealing with, homeowners, and they
Mhm.
see at the closing table or whatever, hey, I'm making 20 grand on this, and they could have made that extra money or whatever. They get kind of pushy
Yeah.
about it. But I find when you're dealing with other investors or whatever, it's like, hey, you just saved me time from listing it and showing it to all these people, and like, you got to make money too. So sweet, take the property away. It just makes it
Yeah.
easier. Okay, cool, right
It's
on.
definitely it's definitely a difference, especially like when you're talking to homeowners, and I'm learning it too, is they think just initially that you're a realtor, and then so when you come in from a different angle, they're like, whoa, what happened? Like, you just blindsided me. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, there's a different way you can do it to go about it. So yeah, I think what you said was so true. When you're working with homeowners, it's a different ballgame for sure.
Yeah. Are you working with any like homeowners as far as trying to wholesale or any of that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I just dived into wholesaling. I've been so anti about it. I thought it was like the weirdest thing. You're riding the line of like what's legal, what's not legal. I also have my real estate license, so I was like, that's not legal, that's not
Yeah.
right. And so this year I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see what the hype's about it. And actually am working through my first wholesale. It's gonna be a 10 unit property, and making pretty significant amount of money off of it, more than I could have done if I were to do it with my real estate license. So I'm definitely now a believer.
Yeah.
But before I stayed away because I was like, what the heck is this? This doesn't sound ethical.
Yeah, well, it definitely, especially if you have a real estate license, it like is it's a fine line to walk there. Me and my
Mm-hmm.
partner that we don't wholesale many deals, but we end up selling them on the MLS. a lot of times I'll be the one to talk to the sellers and be the buyer, but then we end up selling through him. So it's kind of like, it is still like a gray line, but at least it's me because I don't have an active real estate license up in Idaho. But what we do with them too is we always make sure to tell people, listen, like, you're going to make more money if you sell it, like on the market, and we can do that for you. We can help you with that. I'll say my partner can list it. We're going to be a lower price. Like, we're in it. We have to make some money. We're just make sure that we're always very open with them. And you'll be amazed. People a lot of times are just like, I don't care. I don't want to deal with a realtor. It's like, fine. Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to pay you. And they're like, okay, that sounds good. And you're like, geez. I could just make extra grand, but that's whatever.
Yeah, as long as they get what they want. Like, a lot of times, like, I'm learning, and before I didn't think that was true, but a lot of times if they just get what they want, they don't care what you sell it for on the back end, because I just make sure it's clear, like, hey, if we do the wholesale route, like, you get what you really want, but they're going to pay for my charges. And they're like, for sure, why would I not do that? So yeah super cool.
It really enforces the scripts, like, or at least knowing to learn, like, talk to people enough to learn what they really want. You know what I mean? Like, say, like, how to navigate the conversation and dig out of them what they want deep down. You know what I mean? And try to make it work for both of you guys, which I'm not great at, but it takes time and just the more doing it over and over again. So, okay. Well, maybe I'll dive into that in a minute more, but so you end up selling this 11 unit property. Then you said you went to a 6 unit property. Did you do that only after you sold the 11 unit, or did you buy it in the meantime?
So the same person had more property. Again, had that vulnerable conversation, was like, hey, liking this, we're doing great, it's working out. Do you have any more? They're like, yep, we got a 6 unit. And so that was my next, and sat on that for a little while, just rented it out, didn't do hardly anything to it, and then ended up selling that as well.
Okay. And then you continue to move on. You went from the 6 to a duplex, then some single family. And then you mentioned that you did some bare land. Was it bare land or?
Yeah, I just had a lot that I had and sold that off as well, which was really fun.
So out of those types of properties, those asset classes, which one was your favorite or least favorite?
I would say, that is so hard.
Yeah.
I would say multifamily is my favorite, just because it's easier to get. I feel like you get way more money out of it. And I'm kind of biting my tongue on that because I have a single family house right now that's haunting me. That's like, no. But I would say, multifamily for sure. It's easier to sell. It's easier. You make more money off of it. It's easier, I think, in general, than if you were just to have one single family house. I think investors, especially in the Kansas City area, they flock to multifamily because there's just not enough people that are selling it. So those are my favorite, just because they're so much easier to liquidate. Least favorite, I wasn't a fan of, like, I'm not a fan of like land. When I had that lot, I was like, what am I doing with this? So I just sold it off like immediately. But yeah, I think single family sitting in that middle, because it's very touchy. You can either have a good experience with single family, you can have a really bad experience, so. Yeah,
that's kind of the way I look at it too. I mean, land, the way I see it is land you can make money on land, like there's people make tons of money on just bare land or land contracts or whatever. But the thing is that I feel like I have to know more, I got to know more about zoning and like permitting and like what the property could be and having the vision, where the neighborhood's going, all that kind of thing. And I just feel like unless I really, really know a neighborhood or a area and all the laws and regulations and everything, I'll stay away from land for now. I mean, eventually I'll do it. And then multifamily, like you said, is like, it's more, makes you more money and things like that. But the difference is that if you have like smaller multifamily, kind of like what you've done so far, the tenant base usually is a little lower, but single family, you can get into it with the better tenant base to where they might stay in longer. They might take care of the house a little better. So you might not make as much, but it might be more secure. There's just gives and takes. And
it's a good take. Yeah.
Nothing says you can have to stick with one. You just can do all of them, like old Breeya here. So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, so you're still continuing to do investing. Obviously, you mentioned that you just got into the wholesaling deal. Why did you choose to do wholesaling now as opposed to buying more like cash flowing rental properties?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I jumped into wholesaling. I think it was in December. I decided like, I'm gonna just try this for blog purposes. I want to just show like the realness. I wanted to see if the people. I think let's backtrack. I really jumped into Max Maxwell. Have you heard of him?
I've heard of him. I don't know anything about him though.
Okay, yeah, I watched one of his videos and I'm like, I want to see if this is real.
He's a big wholesaler, right?
He's huge at wholesaling, and he was like, my first year I made 80,000, whatever his spiel is.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I want to see if this is real. Real people can do it. And I decided to do a vlog. And so I documented everything that I paid for, and I vlogged it out. Within 24 hours of me doing this, I got my first lead. So I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. So followed up with that and learned the subject to process. Didn't get to the finish line with her, but it was still really cool to learn the process of the subject too. And then from there, it's kept on piquing my interest, and I was still getting leads coming in. And then I found this property that I'm now wholesaling that should be closing here soon. So that's kind of how it started. It just was off of a fluke, and I wanted to see if Max Maxwell was telling the truth.
Yeah,
and he was. So
I guess he was.
Yeah.
How did you get those leads coming in right away? Like, was it just off your vlog, or did you do direct mail, or how did that work?
No, I did old-fashioned signs. I wanted to see, like, if I only have a $20 budget, could I make this work? And you totally can. I was very strategic though, where I placed my signs. I did do my due diligence, where are the areas that aren't targeted already by wholesalers? Because you can kind of see all the we buy houses signs, all that good stuff. I didn't want to be over there. It's too saturated. And I know if they had signs over there, they're probably already doing, direct mail marketing. They probably already have their foot in that area. So I found an area in my town that was untouched. Also would be easier for people to flip. So has a lot of, what do I want to say? A lot of
gentrifying aspects there.
Yes, yeah, that very, very good. Yeah, so a lot of opportunity. And then I found a little sector in my town that is kind of off. And so if you ever, in our town, there's kind of a city part and there's a country part, and there's a little between the city and country part, and that no one has even touched yet. And so I put my signs out, and then within 24 hours I got a call from a lady that's like, I've been wanting to talk to an investor. And I'm like, oh, perfect. So yeah, that's what I did. I just made sure I did my due diligence and made sure it wasn't a saturated place, and kind of just placed a few bandit signs, and I wrote on there, B buys houses, put a Google number on there, and was off to the races.
Cool. Did you get anybody calling, like telling you had to take your signs down or anything like that?
No, actually I didn't. I did if I placed them in houses. I wrote a note to them if they weren't home. I knock on doors. And if they weren't home, I would just say, hey, my name is Breeya. I placed a sign in your yard. If it's an issue, please call me. I'll come pick it up. No one's called.
Huh. So you go knock on doors to buy the house? Is that what you said? Or just to
see if it's okay if I can place their sign in their yard. Oh. So, and it also opens up a conversation of, hey, have you ever thought about buying, or ever thought about selling? But yeah, I just knock on the door and say, hey, my name is Breeya. I'm placing the sign in your yard, if that's okay. If not, totally cool. But I thought I would ask and get your permission first. And when you do that, I will say, like, signs will stay longer in place if you ask than just putting it in their yard. Because I think sometimes they're like, F you didn't even ask, so they just take it out. So I found that that's a great trick. I've also started up some interesting conversations that way as well. And it's an easier segue to kind of doing like a knock on the door and ask,
Yeah, no, and it makes sense. Well, so that kind of that's a segue for us here you found a lot of your deals, and you've done a lot of your, like, started your business and made a lot of success out of, like, networking. So I know that's kind of your bread and butter, and kind of you've done well at it. So can you explain what are the benefits of networking? And then maybe we'll get into, like, I think you have like 5 strategies for networking, right?
Yeah, I do. So there's so many benefits to networking. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. One thing that I found with networking and building my network of people is that I have created a base of people that will follow me from any business I go to. And I know you're kind of a multi-passionate entrepreneur too. I think you own a gym or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to see like the same people jump from different business to business. I love networking for that reason, and building genuine connection, which is what my tips are kind of helping people do, is not just the standard going to a networking event, throwing your card in someone's face and yelling at them that you buy houses for cash. Like, it's having a conversation and building that network. Also, I love networking because, again, like most of my deals and most of my leads come within my network, and a lot of my buyers come from my network of people. So I'm huge on networking. I think it's the best way to get your name out there. It's the best way to just work in your business, and it's also easier to fluctuate. So if you have someone's email, you can keep their email forever, and you can sell them, I don't know, dog toys, or you can sell them houses, or you can sell them gym memberships, all of it, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing I got to work on, is like building an email list, especially, you know, it's like personal networking is great, is the better way. But if you're doing, like for me, the podcast and in the online sales or anything in other businesses, getting that email list is just like so key. And I just haven't even put any time into doing any of that, which it'll come, but maybe I'll learn something here. So what are your kind of five, don't you have 5 keys to networking or something like that?
Yeah, so I have like 5 different steps, or just 5, strategies, keys. And the first one, I always say, like when you're going to a networking event, like you need to know where you're at. I think it's so important to say, because I've been to networking events that are like women in tech, and they're always like, why are you here? And so be able to have that conversation of, okay, this is why I'm here, this is what I can bring to the table, and this is what I'm needing from you. So having a strategic conversation. Before I get started, I want to say that I want you guys to know that I am an introvert by nature. And so these tips like help introverts as well, because it helps you to have a effective conversation. And I think that's so important when networking, because you can get so drained so easily if you're going in and you're just chatting it up with anybody at the bar.
Yeah, especially, and you got to everybody needs to realize too, is that you're going to suck at it at first. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Anybody that's listened to this podcast for a while knows that, for one, I might not be that good still, not bigger pockets, but compared to where I was 50 episodes ago, I'm like way better. You know, at least I feel way more confident in my conversations and reaching out to people. So just with networking, like you just got to start doing it. And you might sound like an idiot sometimes, but that's fine, because the next time you won't sound as dumb, which is perfect.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter like where you are. So I went to the Women in Tech. I don't know anything about technology. It took me like 25 minutes to get on this Zoom call.
Yeah.
You know, so you know where you are so you can have effective conversations. Next, I always say, like, you need to get in there and get with a connector. And a connector is someone who, if they're the ones who knows everyone here within the networking space. So they can say, oh, you're a real estate investor? Well, you need to talk to Sally. You need to talk to Don. You need to talk to this realtor, this mortgage lender. They're the person that is kind of like the phone book, the yellow pages of the networking group. So that's my first mission, is to figure out who is the connector at that networking event, because that's going to help me network effectively. So I can only have one conversation with someone, and they can direct me to who I need to really be talking to.
So how do you find that person?
Yeah, so it's normally the person. So I've always found that connectors are normally the people who are putting on the event. So a lot of times if I'm going to a networking group, I will email the coordinator and say, hey, I am wanting to go to this event. Would you like any help setting up? And normally they say, yeah, of course. Of course, I would love help setting up. Please come an hour early. And then from there, it's normally that person that you can build a relationship. So when the networking event actually starts, they're more likely to point you to the right direction and the right conversations that need to be had. Yeah. So those are normally the people. And the second one, I've always found that connectors, if they're not the coordinator, they're the person that is either they come straight up to you like, hey, you're new here. Who are you? I want to learn more about you, kind of deal, or the one that's doing most of the talking, right? So if it's someone on stage or something like that, those normally are the connectors that I have found in networking events.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, step 3.
Step 3 is do not vomit. This is my favorite. I know.
I mean, that's good. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah. Just keep it in. No, it's do not come in with a sales pitch, right? So we all know that, hi, I'm Breeya Johnson. I'm a real estate investor and I buy houses for cash. Do you know anybody who buys houses? Like, that is so boring. And when you're networking, when you are just spewing the same pitch, the same elevator pitch, I guess, you are not genuinely making a connection with that person. They're probably eyes glazed. I mean, I think we can all see when someone is about to just vomit all over us and say how they're a financial planner and blah, 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 and ask about your 401k and all this stuff. And you're just like, you shut down.
Yeah.
And so I always say, come in with some strategies, like get in a few pieces of news. So I look at my phone, I have like this flipboard where I can see like different news pieces. I try to talk about what's happening in Kansas City, what's happening in my industry, so I can have different conversations. Mm-hmm. I don't try to walk in and say, hey, I'm Breeya, I'm a realtor, real estate investor, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I try to say like, hey, how are you doing? Have you heard about this? Oh my gosh, Amazon stocks are down, blah, 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 blah. Have a different conversation, because then they're more likely to remember you. So the next one,
and on that too, that makes a ton of sense, because like you said, you can always tell when somebody's just giving you the same old speech, or they're just like asking you questions like one after another, just like waiting for the answer, and they're thinking about something else. They're thinking about what they're going to say next before you even get done saying it. You know what I mean? And it just makes it so unpersonable, kind of like our podcast, our interview here. Some podcasts, which they're not bad or anything, but they're just like, so question, answer. But us, I like I don't even have a script that we go off of. I'm just like, hey, let's just like start talking, which makes it more personable. We have a little rapport built here, and it makes it funner. So definitely what you're saying is just be personable and like ask about them, don't just go right towards what you want to talk about. Talk about other things, build rapport, right?
Right. And I always say, like, don't even start off with like, hey, my name is Breeya Johnson. What brought you here? Or, hey, my name is Breeya Johnson. What industry are you in? They prompt that person to go into that elevator pitch and go into that same rhythm, right? We want to break the rhythm, and we want them to remember us, because we're here to have effective conversations, right? And so so it's so important. Another thing I like to say is, don't throw your card in someone's face. Those people who are just like, here, call me, here. You're like, stop. I don't even bring cards when I go to networking events. If I don't feel like we're having a genuine connection, then I just move on. And it sounds so weird, but that's exactly what I do. If I feel like we're having a good conversation, then I give you my phone. It's so personal. I give you my phone, and then I have you type in your name and your email to my phone. So it's more of like a intense experience. So when I go back to circle back to them and to follow up with them, which is our last step, they're more likely to remember me from all the madness. But my fourth step is to know your goals. So to kind of take a step back.
Yeah.
So know exactly what you're wanting to do. So for me, when I got started, I wanted to look for property owners that were distressed, who have multifamily complexes. That was like my goal in my mind. After my 11-unit complex, I was like, I need more like this. So that is my pattern, and that was my goal when I was networking, right? And so what I would do is I would listen into conversations, because I would have that goal in mind. So if I heard anyone say, oh, I'm getting so many toilet calls from all my property, I know, Breeya, hello, you need to turn over and you need to talk to that person. So I think it's so important when you're networking to network and know like your end goal. So if you're an investor and you're looking for single families, properties to flip, maybe you want to talk to more realtors, more wholesalers. If you are someone like myself that's looking for multifamily distress, then maybe you want to be looking for owners that have been in the game for a long time, that may be wanting to sell some of their property. You want to look for those distress cues, and that will help you effectively have conversations and effectively network.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. Okay, is your number 5?
Yes, and number 5 is follow up. So again, I always like to have everyone put their number in my phone, and then immediately I'll send them an email. I have like an email template in Google Docs where I just send them and I say, hey, this is Breeya. Here's what we met. Here's the type of conversation we had. and I give people a time that I would like to meet with them. So I don't just say, hey, let me know when you're available. I say, hey, let's sit down for coffee Friday, 5 p.m. at XYZ Starbucks.
Yeah.
And so it's just more strategic and more assertive. And I found just having those 5 simple tips within my belt has led me to gain more leads in networking than if I were just to go off and frolic and talk to everyone in the party and go to 5 different ones. So
yeah,
that has really helped me, and I think it's really going to help a lot of people too, especially you introverts out there. So
yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm kind of an introvert also. Once I know somebody and I'm talking to them, I'm happy to talk, but to go out there and just like out of nowhere start talking to people is a little difficult. But the follow-up is so key. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
Like one of my tips for this is, a lot of people, we get, I guess it's just lazy to where when we get something in, like, let's say we get somebody's number or like a contact, what you need to do is just right then, just put it in your calendar to follow up with that person right then. Cause if you don't, you're going to it's going to wait. You say, oh, I'll do it when I get home. Then you'll forget about it. Then all of a sudden, like a week goes by and you're like, oh, I never reached out to that person. I don't want to feel dumb now to reach out to him so much later. And then you don't end up doing it. And then it never happens, do it right then. Or, but also maybe a CRM, some sort of a CRM. Yeah. Do you have anything like that you use?
Yeah, so I did use Lion Desk for a long time. I think it's like $25, and it's pretty cool. There's an app where you can just kind of go in and do it. But right now I'm using just Google Contacts, and that has been awesome. And I label people based off, what they are. So if I'm in a networking event real quick while you have my phone, once you give it back, I'll go to my tags and I'll say, hey, this is a Kansas City investor. Hey, this is a Texas investor, or, a lender, or whatever you are. And I go ahead and pick that person. But I think it's so true. Like, you have to follow up immediately. And one thing I love to do is add in some key talking points that we talked about in our conversation. So if we talked about how Amazon stocks were plummeting, then I'm going to input that into my email so it can jog their memory of, oh, this was that girl Breeya. This is what we talked about. Oh, she was really cool, and she's a real estate investor. And it kind of brings up that memory log. So that you have more strategic and more effective conversations.
Yeah, that's perfect. Taking the notes is key too. And, if once you get a cheap, CRM, like we use Podio, which is not like the cheapest thing, but we have all kinds of stuff going on in it. If you don't have time to do that, like, it's pretty easy and cheap to hire like a virtual assistant or somebody. Like, we have he's our friend now, but we hired him, and he's in Nicaragua, and he does our like cold calling and our lead generation, our texting and everything. Yeah. And so he just enters all that in, or if I talk to somebody, I can enter it in and I tag him, and it really doesn't cost that much to like pay him or, get him started in there. And it just really, so my point of bringing that up is because now we have this database of I think 680 contacts that have, these are people that are warm leads that have reached out to us, 600 and something people. And so,
yeah, that's awesome.
At the time the market was hot and they didn't want to make a deal because our prices were too low. Well, now we have him going back and he's just making phone calls, following up. And we have all the notes, whether I talk to him or my partner talked to him, and he's just talking to him. Hey, we talked to you on this date and da-da-da. And so the follow-up is key. And you could reach out to him 3-4 times down the road over and over again. Right. So that's a great advice there for sure.
I
definitely
love that. I definitely love that. I was going to say, another thing is really cool is if you're having, say if you're looking for distressed property and you're wanting to go the owner financing route, and that person was talking about the leaky toilets and how they're sick of getting those phone calls, maybe that first initial follow-up, they weren't ready to sell their property owner financing, but maybe it's going to be 3 to 5 touches down the road, and next thing you know, you have an owner finance deal, and they're hot and ready because you've established that relationship, and their pain's probably even stronger now. So it's so important, what you said, to have that CRM system and keep notes hey, this was the guy I met at XYZ networking, and he was talking about having irritation with his tenants or something like that. So I think that's super important.
Super important. Yeah. Good tips there. So, we're having this conversation on, what is the date today? March 27th, 2020. And I'm not exactly sure when this episode's going to come out, but right now we're kind of in the midst of the old coronavirus thing going on, So what are your plans going forward? how have they changed with what the coronavirus is? And granted, when this does come out, it could be totally different from what we think. Nobody knows what's really going to happen, but kind of like, what is your plans going forward? Where's your trajectory? What do you want to get into next?
Yes. So my plan is I'm preparing myself more creative financing and brushing my stuff back up on owner financing, all that good stuff. My thought process is the way that I'm thinking this market's going to go is probably towards the end of summer. We're going to see a lot more pre-foreclosures and foreclosures. So I'm preparing myself for that. I'm preparing myself to do wholesale pre-foreclosures. I'm pivoting my marketing structure. So it's, hey, are you having a hard time with your mortgage payments? Hey, like what's going on with your mortgage? Here's some information about pre-foreclosure. Here's some information about foreclosure. So I'm pivoting my marketing already because I know that right now, I think with everything that's going on in April is when we're going to start seeing people miss their payments. And because we have that grace period, we're not really going to feel it until, May and June. And so I think this stuff is going to build up. And so if I'm already setting myself up where in Kansas City that I have a pipeline of people who've already raised their head and said, hey, I'm already having trouble with making my mortgage payments, and going in and helping them and wholesaling it, or, whatever we can do to assist that person. So that's what I'm doing. I'm preparing for that route. I'm also preparing to just stack up all my cash and look at my expenses, because I think it's going to be super important for you to be liquid. Yeah. Be able to move with cash and be able to take advantage of a lot of these properties that are going on market, and they're sitting there for a long time. And so they're seeing extreme decreases in value. And that can even be traditional single family homes, like traditional homes people buy and sell, are seeing significantly, decreasing in value, which that's a great opportunity too to sit on. So that's my game plan.
No, that's perfect. I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well, the same exact thing. And one thing that just dawned on me, literally, while you were talking, is during the last 2008 recession and the mortgage crisis and everything, the middle of the country, where you're at, got they felt it, but there wasn't huge price reductions. You know what I mean? There wasn't the wave was just a little bit smaller, the up and down. Whereas I feel like now it's going to be equal everywhere, because it's not just these high end houses that were being bought for so much money that all of a sudden nobody can afford, and they're losing their mortgages and going to foreclosure. It's just people not being able to go to work. And so if we get over it within a couple of weeks, which it might be over by the time this comes out, I think it probably will have a quick rebound, and kind of just like David Green had a good analogy. I'm in a mastermind with him, and he said, it's like the hose will be kinked, and then right now the hose is kinked, but when you open it, let it go, there's going to be a huge gush, and all of a sudden just the market's going to take off again, just like that, which totally could happen, which would be great. I kind of would like it to correct a little bit, but
yeah, me too.
I mean, because the prices are too high. But if it doesn't, then I think it's gonna affect everybody equally, not just the coast. It'll hit hometown America out there in the middle of the country just as much. So that's kind of interesting thought. So you might be buying up those $20,000 houses again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I'm thinking no matter what, I think it is going to impact, because a lot of the middle country, especially here in Missouri, that we're working class folks, you know what I mean? So a lot of us are paycheck to paycheck, barely, we're mortgage poor. And since I've been in the real estate world, I've also seen that no one has really learned their lesson from 2008. And a lot of times that people are still buying over their means. And so I think it's going to hurt a lot of people, and there's going to be so much opportunity in that pre-sale and foreclosure, pre-foreclosure and foreclosure route. So learning that and brushing up on those skills, I think is going to be key moving forward into quarter 2, quarter 3, and maybe even quarter 4.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so crazy how quickly we forget, huh? It's it's just like eating or drinking or something like that, you eat some big old bowl of ice cream or cake or something, you feel like crap, and then you're like, oh, I gotta stop doing that. A week goes by and you're like, F it, I'm gonna have this. Or you drink.
Get a whole sheet cake.
Yeah, you drink too much and you're hungover, you're like, I'm never drinking. And then a week goes by, like, oh yeah, it sounds pretty good. Same thing with money, I guess. It's just crazy humans. We're just crazy humans running around.
Yeah, we are. And, It's crazy because I've been saying this for 2 years, just watching as, some of my realtor friends who, when you get, when you get a pre-approval, that amount is not the amount you should be going for, right? Because that makes you mortgage poor.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I see some of our realtor friends and colleagues, they will make sure that their client hits that pre-approval amount, or they go over it. Especially here in Kansas City, we've had such a boom. So we've seen people who, we push the lender to approve them for more, even though they really shouldn't be. So I think those are the people and those are the problems that we're going to see come to fruition here soon. Because no one has learned. They're eating the cake all over again. And so there's going to be so much opportunity for us investors here soon.
All right. Lots of good points there. So you mentioned it just a second ago where you're kind of brushing up on your foreclosure and pre-foreclosure stuff. So what is your go-to method for, learning about new aspects of real estate? Is it podcasts, books, mentorship, seminars? What do you like to do?
First it's Instagram. Once I get Instagram and I get a general idea of their knowledge, I go to a book. And then from there, podcast if they have them, but I'm definitely the Instagram and then book type of person.
So what do you do on Instagram? You just look up like real estate investors, or how do you find people on Instagram to learn from?
Yeah, so just using that hashtag, real estate investors, real estate mentor. I look at a lot of, Grant Cardone, and there's someone else. I think Nicole Espinosa. I've been looking into her. She's a short sale queen. I think that's her book. I think I try to gravitate towards people who have a book. So I feel like if you can write a book, then you're pretty knowledgeable about that topic. I think it's easy for people to kind of build that fluff. So I try to gravitate towards like a book because it shows, hey, you really know what you're talking about if you can write a whole freaking book on it,
Right. Yeah, no. Yeah. This whole podcast, actually, I'm just faking my way through. It's like,
he doesn't know what he's talking about at all. Yeah.
Perfect. No, but I definitely,
I'm just kidding.
No, I definitely understand what you mean though. Like, especially on Instagram, you can find a lot of people that like they're not doing anything. You know what I mean? They just like have listened to so many podcasts that they can regurgitate it really well. So you got to kind of like dig in and like understand who you're talking to. And neither of us are like super pros. We're not worth $100 million, but we will be one day. We're working there.
Oh, for sure. Next 5 years, come back.
5 years, 100 million.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned, guys.
I'm going to get a loan. You're going to be my hard money lender.
Yeah, I know. That's my goal. That's my pivot out of here is I want to get into that. Yeah, that's really funny that you said that.
Perfect. Well, that works. Okay. Our next question is, what about a favorite app or something that you use, technology that makes life, business, personal life easier?
I was going to say Google Contacts just because it's on my phone, ready to go. It syncs to my Gmail, and it's free. So it's a really nice way that I can keep up with everyone, keep my contacts going, and can sync it to everything. So
do you have an iPhone?
No, I'm an Android user.
Okay, see, so I have an iPhone, but I love everything about Google. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I love all their Drive, their Gmail. Like I have a Gmail app on my phone. I don't even use the Apple one. I'm always wondering, like, why do I have an iPhone? Like I don't understand. I use all Google products.
I have no idea. It's beautiful. I love it. I have all of it. I have Google Sheets where I keep all my leads and everything is on my phone and it's so easy. So yeah, I love it. But Google Contact is what I use. And I think it's super easy, especially if you are kind of cash strapped, but you need like a kind of a CRM system. This is a great way to do it. You can put in as much information as you want and add notes and all that good stuff.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Well, where can people find out more about you, your business, like what you're doing, reach out to you, anything you want to plug right now, do it.
Ooh, okay. So you can find me on Instagram. That's my platform of choice. You can find me at Breeya_J, where you learn more about like business, just more about me personally. You can also go to @theimpact_REI. That's more of real estate investing and sharing knowledge and all that good stuff. You can always catch me at www.breeyajohnson.com, and that's BREEYA. And then johnson.com, where I have my blog and everything, the events, speaking engagements, all that good stuff you can find there.
All right, cool. Well, Breeya, I really appreciate it. Had all kinds of good topics, and hopefully people learn from this, especially the networking part is like so key. It's just like start networking. That's my biggest downfall is like trying to network more, which is why I try to start this podcast. So
yeah,
I appreciate everything you did. I hope the fans reach out to you, or the listeners, not fans. We're not famous, but I don't know why I said that.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Yeah, yes, we are. I hope somebody reaches out to you, and thanks for all the information again. You have a great evening.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am.